let's have an introduction into isometric 3D sketching. Now, if we have a look at this page, this is the page from last week, and there we saw oblique, which is one method of 3D sketching, where, as you know, you draw the front of the shape and then your angle lines, if you want to call them, or your depth lines, go up at 45 degrees. Now, isometric is different. It's slightly more sophisticated and it looks better. So you're going to be using a grid. Now I've just realized I've got mine slightly upside down, so you should see isometric grid paper over there. It's not meant to be used portrait, it's meant to be used landscape. And here we go. Now, if I show you the difference between isometric and oblique. So what you've already done is oblique, where you draw the front. I'm not using the grid right now, I'm just drawing freehand. And then you've got your 45 degree lines, which go up like so. And if I just use my red pen here to help explain that. So there is a 45 degree line. Now, isometric is different because isometric looks like this. And now I am drawing on the grid. I'm not sure how much of the grid you can see through the screen, but right now I'm drawing on the grid. So you can see that the verticals are all on the grid, and then those angles are all on the grid, which helps me to get them parallel. Now this is not on the grid, don't worry about that, you don't need to do this. Those two lines are at 30 degrees. So this is isometric. So oblique is over here, where you've got your depth lines at 45 degrees, and isometric is over here, where you've got your lines at 30 degrees, and actually you've got a V shape. So let me explain what I mean by that. I think of this as being the lazy V, because a normal V, so if I write the word very, you see that V. We're not talking about that kind of V, we're talking about a lazy V. Do you see it? Now, what we then do is we do our 3 vertical lines, and then we do that, and then we do that. And of course, I'm sure you've noticed, those 3 lines are parallel. Those 3 lines are parallel, and of course your verticals are also all parallel. Now, I think, yes, I did. Last video I explained to you about the idea of repetition, of quality repetition, what we call deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is when you repeat something the correct way in order to get those skills. Like, for example, tying a shoelace. You learn how to do it properly, you do it over and over and over and over again, and after a while you don't have to concentrate anymore doing it. So I'm going to do this a couple of times and then you're going to do it. So we start off with a lazy V, then we get vertical, vertical, vertical. And then there's the other parallel V, and then it connects. I think of this as being a bit of an upside down V. Now if I just fill my page with a couple of different varieties of 3D shapes, geometric, excuse me, I forget the technical term for it right now. There we go. We can do one, well, let me squeeze one over here. Now, because I've done this for a long time, and for example, if I were showing you the work of my year 13s, or my year 12s, they don't need to use this grid paper anymore because they have learned. So for example, without grid paper, I have developed the skill, which is exactly what you can do, of drawing that 30 degrees automatically, which allows me to, for example, do something like this. Yeah, and there, do you see that lazy V? There's my V, and of course there's the rest of my shape. What I want you to do is to fill your page with these simple 3D shapes. Now, if you genuinely find it easy, and I do mean genuinely find it easy, do you remember last week I had this and I said to you, it's better to do a whole page of simpler shapes than to try and do a complex one and get it wrong because you're training your brain badly. Now, if you genuinely find that these are easy and you're not just going back to oblique, but you've done this before maybe, try some more complex shapes, but no diagonals. Just trust me on that one. So for example, you might do the letter L like you've got over there. You might try a letter, let's just see, yeah, a letter C, like that. You might try an E. However, I cannot overemphasize this. It is better to learn how to walk properly before you run than to try and run first, where you can actually mess up the learning process. So, there you go. Play around with your grid paper to create some isometric cubes and geometric solids like that. Have fun.